Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dauphin County Democratic Committee's third uh, endorsed candidate Facebook Live meet and greet. As you know, due to the coronavirus, we are unable to meet in person. So, this is our way to show you our endorsed candidates and give you a chance to ask your questions and learn more about them. Tonight, we have Patty Smith, who is running for state representative of the 104th Legislative District. Hi, Patty. How are you?
Hi, Rogette. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Just so everyone knows, feel free to ask your questions for Patty. You can type them in and she can answer them. In addition, you can learn more about her and the rest of our endorsed candidates on our website at www.dauphindems.com. So, Patty, I'd like you to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you. As Rogette said, I am Patty Smith, and I'm running for state representative in the 104th District. I ran for the same seat in 2018 and just barely lost that election. So, of course, I had to run again in 2020 to finish what I started back then. For those of you who don't know me, I have worked in local and state government management. I've worked with nonprofits. My family owns a small business here locally. And I've been a government watchdog for a long time with Eric Epstein's group, Rock the Capitol. And we've done a lot of good things there. We fight waste and corruption on the local and state levels. And that is a passion of mine, to make sure that we hold our government and our elected officials accountable. Because if we don't, no one's going to. And that's the only way we're going to get the representation back in our hands where it deserves to be.
Great. Can you tell everyone, Patty, what parts of Dauphin County and Lebanon County actually makes up the 104th District?
Sure. So in Lebanon County, I have North Anvil Township and East Hanover. And in Dauphin County, it's odd. It's a gerrymandered district. And if you look at it, it looks like a goldfish to me. I don't know what else to call it. So I have Susquehanna Township and Pembroke, parts of Swatara Township, and then it goes up north through Dauphin, Halifax, Millersburg, and it ends just at the Lichens line. So I don't have Lichens, but I have everything below that. Okay. It loops around, it jumps over Lower Paxton and picks up again down towards the Gap. So it's a really big district that I have from end to end.
And how are you handling that with the coronavirus? Obviously, you can't go door to door, you can't go to community events or anything of that nature. So how are you reaching out to all the voters in a district that large and getting your message out?
Well, we're doing phone banking for sure. That's one way to connect with the voters directly. But I've also been doing town halls. So I started town halls way back on March 19th. I just completed my 25th town hall this morning. Wow. So I've been having approximately 3 a week. They tend to run about an hour. So I'm sure I'm probably closing in, if not over 20 plus hours in content. We've covered all different aspects. We've covered coronavirus topics like coronavirus and your pets and how to navigate the legal system while the courts are closed due to coronavirus, how to keep your faith during the coronavirus. And I've had guests such as the State Auditor General, Eugene DePasquale, Congresswoman Madeline Dean, State Rep Mary Jo Daley. So we've had a large, I guess you would say, coverage of topics. And I just started a series on criminal justice reform today. We're also having a series on racism. I had the first one about a week ago, I would say, with Christian Picciolini as my guest. So I'm trying to cover not only coronavirus topics, but topics that tend to get lost in the news cycle of coronavirus, but are still so important that we've got to keep them in focus so that we don't let go of it and lose sight of how important they are and the needs that we have around them.
So, if elected in November, what would your top 3 priorities be?
Well, in my district, education is really important. We've got 2 school districts in the 104 that are underfunded because the state is not running all the money through the fair funding formula. Jobs and worker protection are definitely a big one, increasing the minimum wage and protecting our unions, which I think is going to be more important than ever now once we start the economy back up. Same thing with the environment. My district has a lot of rural areas, and we have a lot of outdoors people. We have farming community down in Lebanon County. So the environment is really important to them as well as to me. And of course, you can't have any of that that's working properly if you don't have reform. And being a government watchdog, as I said, I know painfully well that Pennsylvania is the 5th most corrupt state in the country. And that's based on how many elected officials have been convicted of crimes. So without having serious reform in the state house, we're not going to be able to have any meaningful legislation passed that actually positively impacts the constituents in the 104 instead of helping those that donate large sums of money and can afford lobbyists. So reform is right up there on top.
You have mentioned there are 2 school districts in the 104th. What are those 2 school districts?
Susquehanna Township and Central Dauphin School District are underfunded every year because the state is not running all of the public money through the fair funding formula. So they only run new money through, and that's what's causing the discrepancies in funding. And so, of course, if your school districts aren't being fully funded, then they're going to have to reach into the pockets of the residents to make up the difference. And one of the reasons that Susquehanna and Central Dauphin have such high school taxes is that reason specifically, because the state isn't pulling their weight in funding these schools.
You mentioned funding. I have a question here from Joe. What are your views on the short-term budget that was recently squeaked through the House this week?
Well, I think that we're all, I know we've never seen anything like it. With the massive amount of revenue shortfalls that we have, and we have no way of knowing how much worse that's going to get, because we don't know if we're going to be able to open 100%, everybody back to green, everybody back to normal, whatever normal is. Right. And then again, are we going to have a second wave of this come the end of summer or the fall? And God forbid, it goes into 2021. So I think that they are trying to do the best that they can in terms of really flying blind on the budget. I think next year is where the hard work is going to be. At that point, they'll have a clear picture of the damage done and how much federal funding we've received to help us through that. Then they're going to have to make some tough decisions on how to make up that money, where it's going to come from. And I'm hoping that they take the opportunity to kind of retool their priorities, because I think Pennsylvania definitely has plenty of income, plenty of resources. I think their priorities are off in terms of what's funded.
Okay. I'm going to show a question from Beth for you. She's thanking you for your hard work. And she would like you to speak to the breaking news of Representative Lewis testing positive for the coronavirus. I did not know he did. He's actually my current state rep. So that's breaking news for me as well. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I just heard that actually before we came on, that he had tested positive about a month ago. So he's saying that he's, recovered and had quarantine and everything. And I think that shows the danger of not wearing masks and the danger of politicizing the COVID-19 pandemic. In no way, shape, or form should wearing a mask number one, be able to tell what political party you belong to, and number two, should be up for debate and be taken as a attack on our rights and our civil liberties. We're doing it for the greater good. People are walking around unaware that they're infected, and that's the scariest part of it. The state isn't testing everyone, so there's no way to know who has it and who doesn't. When you're only testing sick people, there could be thousands of people out there spreading the disease. So I think that he tested positive is really a clear sign of just how dangerous this is, because they're taking precautions up at the state capitol and he still got it.
Right.
So I think that really shows how important it is that we should all be wearing masks, not for our protection, but for everyone else's protection. And in turn, that is our protection. Because my husband works and he's out there every day. If he's not wearing a mask and he gets it, or if somebody in his work gets it, then that's coming home to me. So it's not just yourself that you need to be worried about. You need to be worried about who else you could be infecting when you bring that through the door. So.
And it's unfortunately that some of our elected officials are politicizing this issue. I saw over the weekend, especially the president, he's actually making a point not to wear a mask, along with the vice president, even though his experts and his doctors are the ones recommending that we are all wear a mask. It's a short-term inconvenience for long-term gain, in my opinion. A very simple thing we can all do to protect each other, as you mentioned.
It is. And I just, if I can kind of go off on a side note, I think it really speaks to a larger problem that we have right now, in that our elected officials seem more inclined to divide us in as many ways as possible than they are to bringing us together as a country. And if we continue down this path where everything is an us versus them topic, even when it's not, like, I'm amazed at what they can actually make into an us versus them topic.
Yes.
And it's really sad that the residents of the 104, the residents of Pennsylvania, and the residents of our country are actually stepping up and taking control and helping others. When you look at our elected officials, they're the ones that are fighting and standing in the way of health and progress. I mean, really, if you look to the leaders, it's the community that's leading, not our elected officials. And that's really, really wrong.
And that's why it's important that people vote this year, because we're only going to get change at the ballot box. But also with the coronavirus, you're a small business owner yourself. And, there's two sides to this. There's the public health issue. But as you know, over 1 million Pennsylvanians have lost their jobs due to this. In addition, thousands have died. So there's two parts to this. So as a state representative, how would you balance the needs of both groups?
Well, just to clarify, I personally am not a small business owner.
Okay.
My family owns a business. So my family has owned a business in central PA since 1956, when my grandfather opened it. So it is still family owned, but I don't have anything to do with the business. But to answer your question, I do see the struggle that my dad goes through with this pandemic. He was an essential business, is an essential business. So he had to be open the entire time. And there definitely is a need for businesses to be able to have an income, businesses to be able to keep their doors open and provide for their families. But we also can't put profits over people. And we really should have done a better job, in my opinion, in watching out for the care money, to make sure that it went to the people it was supposed to go to and not the well-connected. See, it all goes back to the well-connected, the people with lobbyists, the people who have friends. Those are the people who are winning in our government every day. And that's just a perfect example. So our elected officials should have done a better job, in my opinion, in watching over that money and making sure that it went to who it needed to go to. They should be stepping up and fixing those issues, or at least making phone calls to try to fix those issues on who received that money when they shouldn't have. Sorry, my dog just made a really weird noise. What is that? But yeah, people need to make a living too. And it goes back to the masks. I think that the CDC and the government officials, health officials have all said that if we can do the masks and the social distancing, then we're going to be okay. But, when I go to the grocery store or I go to the post office to check my box, there's people everywhere without a mask. And it's like,
Right.
it's the simplest thing to do. And you see the videos from Memorial Day weekend, people aren't wearing a mask, people aren't social distancing. So, we've got to do our part too, to ensure that we can open and stay open. And that's part of it. And, if it comes to the point where we've got to mandate that people are wearing masks so that we don't have a second wave, then our officials need to seriously take a look at that, because it is not in the Constitution anywhere that says you don't have to wear a mask when there's a health pandemic. So, liberties are one thing, but health of the community and each other are a totally different thing. So wearing a mask is an easy solution. And if we can get everybody to do that in social distance, then I do see a path forward for a safe opening of the state.
So I don't want to speak for you, but then you generally agree with the governor's phase-in plan of reopening then?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I do agree with the plan. However, I think the flaw in the plan is that we're not testing people.
Right.
So, if I wanted to get a test, I cannot get a test because I am not symptomatic. So when the opening going from red to yellow to green is based on the number of new cases and you're not testing people, how do you know accurately how many new cases we have? And that concerns me. I realize tests are hard to come by, but if that's going to be the criteria, then we really need to know who has it and who doesn't. Again, people aren't wearing masks. So just because we're in a yellow or a green, if we're not testing everybody, then people are going to be walking around without masks and infecting people.
And that's where I see some of the arrogance, particularly of our federal elected officials. For instance, I remember Vice President Pence saying he and his family gets tested every week. And as you mentioned, some of us can't get tested once.
That's right. And you have, sports stars getting tested and movie stars getting tested.
Yes.
And then you have healthcare workers and people who work at Giant who can't get a test, and they're on the front lines every single day,
right,
in harm's way so that we can live our lives, right? And they can't even get a test. So, yeah, we've got a serious problem, and I don't know how we can be comfortable saying that we know how many people are infected when we aren't testing.
I have a question here for Jim. He sees you as a Second Amendment supporter, and that can mean many things. How do you suggest we reduce gun violence in Pennsylvania?
Yes. So I am a Second Amendment supporter. I am a gun owner myself. I believe just about everybody I'm related to has a gun. I think everybody my husband is related to has guns. But that's because they're hunters. So I do believe, though, that we need to keep the guns out of the hands of people who are going to hurt themselves and hurt others. And so I think we can do a better job on background checks to make sure that we're getting everything that's supposed to be caught in those. I also think we really need to close the gun show loophole. And, when I ran in 2018, I got a lot of flack from people telling me that the gun show loophole is fake and it doesn't exist and it's just Democratic propaganda. But my husband and I last year went to a show here at the Farm Show building, and we went up to a table, and the first thing that the guy did was come around, went straight to my husband, and he said, I'm not a dealer, so there's no background checks at my table. And then he said, it's all legal here in PA, it's legal. And so there really is a gun show loophole. And if I know that, then you can be assured that people who aren't supposed to have a gun know that as well. And they're going to take advantage of that. And so, and I also think we need to do a better job of funding our mental health and making sure that we have services available for those who need it, and that they can always find a bed when they need it, and they can always afford counseling, because that is a major problem that we have here in Pennsylvania, our mental health funding. And we need to do a better job of that.
And as you know, that there's an issue with even seeing a doctor when you
Mhm.
have mental health issues. It could take months to see a doctor, get medication if you need it. There's still a stigma. Some people are still embarrassed to even admit that they have a problem. And
Yeah,
that's before, as you mentioned, you get to the funding problems,
that's right.
issues.
And just finding a bed. If you have someone say, we had a family member a few years back that we were afraid was suicidal, and we were very concerned. And so what we did was, in that moment, we tried desperately to find a bed. We tried desperately to put them somewhere so that they wouldn't be left to their own devices. And it was days before we found a bed where they could get help. So, I mean, that's inexcusable. Absolutely inexcusable. And there's nothing wrong with needing those services. Like
Right.
you said, there is a stigma. There shouldn't be a stigma. And I think that we need to have a better conversation about mental health, starting in our schools, so that people understand that there is nothing wrong with it. You're not broken. You just need help, because everybody needs help at some point in their lives. There's no shame to that at all.
That's true.
Yeah.
Compare yourself to the current incumbent that you are running against in November. How do you differ from her?
Do we have enough time for that conversation? Let's just say every way. Yeah, so we'll start with the environment. I am running against Sue Helm. She's had the seat now for 14 years. Sue Helm, in the last environmental scorecard, she scored an 8 out of a 100. So what that means is she is literally voting to ruin the planet, to kill the planet she lives on, and the planet you live on. And I don't know what universe or what twilight zone that makes sense, but she's really doing it. And the environment is important to not only my district, but important to the state and important to surrounding states, because of course we're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. So, we need to do a better job of fighting for that. And I have been involved in fighting for environmental issues for many years, even before I ran in 2018. So I will absolutely fight for that. Fight for renewable energy. The state isn't doing enough in terms of renewable energy. We need to stop funding the fossil fuel and nuclear industries. They don't need subsidies. They don't need government bailouts. What we need to do is start funding renewable energy sources. I think the state needs to lead by example. There's no reason we can't have solar on every state building in Harrisburg. If you look around there, there's not a tree to be had. I mean, it's prime for solar. Solar is affordable now. It's a good source of energy. And I think the state needs to really lead by example and say, yes, this is an absolutely doable thing for you, for us, and for you in your home. And we need to start investing in renewables and making sure that they can take over from fossil fuels in the near future. Sue Helm is notoriously difficult to get a hold of. It's hard to get a meeting with her. She doesn't have town halls. She does not feel as if she's accountable or has to answer to her constituents. She hasn't had a town hall in I don't know how long. And in 2018, she had one scheduled. And when she heard that Democrats were coming to ask her questions, she canceled it.
I
And
remember
so,
that.
Yeah. And so she said notoriously, well, we'll have one after the election, right? So when there was no chance of her, flubbing anything up for the election. And then she never had it. Where 2 years later, she still has not had a town hall. She's had 3 pre-recorded 15-minute interviews during the coronavirus. They were all pre-recorded, no constituent back and forth, no ability to ask her questions. So she really is out of touch. Her idea of showing up and showing support is, popping in, handing out her pens, taking a photo so she can say she was there, and leaving. I spend a lot of time working in my community. I volunteer for the Lions Club. I do a lot of volunteer work in animal rescue and in animal advocacy up at the Capitol with the Humane Society. I work with land planning and making sure that our local governments are taking neighboring townships into consideration when they plan, when they zone, traffic situations. So I am constantly out there in the community fighting for everyone every day. And I was doing that long before I ever ran for office. And I've continued that. Even after my loss in 2018, I still continue to do that. So I'm not one of those people who show up just so you'll vote for me. I'm somebody who's worked constantly in the community because it's the right thing to do, not because I want something back in return.
Do you think the situation we're in right now with the coronavirus, um, as a challenger, gives you a disadvantage because it gives Sue Helm an excuse not to uh, do a town hall with you or do a debate with you or actually have to speak to the people she's supposed to be representing? And if so, how are you overcoming that?
I don't think that the coronavirus has me at a disadvantage. In fact, I think, oddly enough, it's leveled the playing field.
Okay.
Because now more than ever, it doesn't matter if you've ever run for, office before. It doesn't matter if you know what you're doing, or you're brand new, or you've been at it 14 years like she has, because nobody knows how to hold an election. Nobody knows how to campaign during the coronavirus. And we do have this technology, and I would say to anyone who is looking to have a forum with either of us, we can still do that in these types of situations on Zoom, Facebook Live. There's still plenty of opportunities for Sue and I to get side by side in the virtual same room and have a discussion. But like I said, she is not one
Right.
historically to do those types of things. But yeah.
Well, you mentioned your love for animals, and your dog did make an appearance on this broadcast. So, why don't
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about your family? Do you only have one dog, or what's your dog's name?
I have 2 dogs, 2 Weimaraners, Baxter and Bailey, um, 11 and 12 years old, which hurts my heart. Weims have a long lifespan, but still they're closing in on the end, so that makes me sad. But I've been married for 20 years. We've been together almost 25. No kids. My dogs are my kids. But yeah, I've lived in Central PA all my life. Born and raised in Hummelstown, so I've never strayed far from there. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoy living here in Central PA. I really do. I think it's a beautiful place. I think the people are wonderful. And the people in the 104, while they're so varied, you've got suburban life here in Susquehanna Township, and Pembroke and Swatara, and then you have really rural areas up north, and again in Lebanon. But everybody to their core is really the same. We all want the same things. We all want to be loved. We all want to be secure, financially secure, health issues. We want to be healthy. We want our kids to succeed. And that's really what I go off of. I don't look at somebody as a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. I just look at everybody who really wants the best for themselves and their family. And we may differ on how we think we can get there, but the beauty in diversity is that everybody has their own ideas. And when you get a lot of people in the same room with a lot of different ideas, like magic can happen and
Right.
you can really do a lot of great things. So I just love it here. And I'm proud to represent the 104. It's really a great district.
You do have a very diverse district. That is
Mm-hmm.
true. And
Yeah.
it's a shame that in today's varied opinions aren't always appreciated, as I'm sure you know. We're
Yeah.
losing that in our society, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question from Lori. As you know, if things stay the way they are, the House of Representatives is Republican controlled. So you would be in the minority. What are some issues you feel as though you could work with the Republican Party on to get passed for the betterment of all Pennsylvanians?
Well, call me crazy, but I think that you can really work together with anyone on any issue if both sides want it to happen.
That's
There,
true.
yeah, there's always common ground to be had. And I have what I think is a gift in being able to boil down a conversation with somebody who has an opposing view of mine, um, and boiling it down to issues that I know we agree on. And once I can get the other side saying, yeah, I agree with that, I agree with that, then we've got something we can build on. And we can slowly then start talking about things that we disagree on. And it's a lot easier to bring it to the center than if you start from two opposing views right out of the gate. And I'm really good at that. And I really oddly enjoy talking to people who think differently than I do, because I love to know why they think the way they do, what they think they're going to get out of that. Are they flexible? Are they not flexible? And I love being able to just pick at that and bring it back to something that we can both agree on. So I honestly think that I could do that with any issue out there. And that includes even the hardest ones that we generally fight about, because I think these issues are so polarized because the special interest groups are involved.
Yes.
I was at a meeting once where the NRA spoke, and the first thing out of her mouth was, you got to sign up because those Democrats want every gun that you own. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you don't have a clue what you're talking about. And you don't care that you don't have a clue. It's all about what's in it for them, right? She can sell more membership having that statement come out first. And they really don't care about the truth or the facts. They just want to protect their bottom line. And we need to do a better job, I think, as elected officials in cutting through that propaganda so that the community can stop being so polarized. Because really, it is the special interests and our politicians that are driving that. It's not necessary at all.
And along with special interests, you also have the party. The party usually has agenda, and once there are members to go along with that agenda. I've experienced this as chair, where I voted one way, the party went another way, and they weren't necessarily happy with me.
Yeah.
So, so my question to you is, because you have such a diverse district, particularly like you mentioned, gun ownership, gun rights versus gun violence.
Mm-hmm.
Will you be an independent voice for your district, even if it might go against a vote that the party may want you to vote on if elected? How will you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, I've actually had that come up a lot. And in 2018, it surfaced when I started getting endorsements.
Mm.
So, for instance, I was behind and for Sunday hunting. I think that that's a great idea on many levels. And I explained my position. And then I was also endorsed by Humane PA, who is against hunting altogether. And so, somebody from the hunting side of it said, how can you claim you're the wife of a hunter and that you're for Sunday hunting, but yet, you're endorsed by them. And my answer was that I make it clear when somebody endorses me, that our issues are going to align probably 99%. But there are going to be times when I feel differently than what you do. And if you can't handle that, if you are demanding 100% of my vote, then we can't be partners in this. But if you're okay with me being on your side the majority of the time, then let's work together. I don't think you're ever going to get 100% out of any politician. And if they say you are, you need to take a closer look at that, because number one, they're either lying to you, or number two, their vote's for sale. And both of those are a problem. And I've always been an independent voice, and I'm always going to continue to be that. I've taken a lot of flack for that, like you have, Rogette, and it's not fun. But I have a strong personality, and I'm used to standing up for myself, especially as a government watchdog. I mean, I've been threatened and harassed, and it's a long story, but I've never backed down, because what I believe is right is what's best for the majority of the people. And I'm not arrogant enough to think that my current train of thought on any subject is the final answer. I'm always open to people coming to me with their point of view on the topic. And that could just be the piece of information I was missing to change my mind on something. So, I'm constantly learning, constantly evaluating what I think about things and where I stand on things. And I'm always open to somebody coming to me and explaining why they think I'm wrong.
Before I move on to the next question, if one of our listeners or watchers would like to donate to your campaign or learn more about you, where could they do that at?
They can donate through my website, which is www.pattysmith4pa.com. And it's Patty with a Y, and 4 is spelled out, F-O-R. So pattysmith4pa.com.
Great.
Thank you.
What committees would you like to serve on, and why?
I'd like to be on the education committee to make sure that our kids are getting what they need. I think we need to do a better job giving our kids the tools they need for success at life. I think we need to do a better job at our technical training, that college isn't for everyone, and that's okay. But technical jobs pay really, really well, and they're very secure. And it's another path that I don't think is spoken about enough. I also would like to be on the appropriations committee. Of course, that's where a lot of shenanigans can take place in the back office, in the back rooms, behind closed doors. And I want to be involved in those conversations so that I know money isn't being handed out to somebody's friend or doing a favor for some family member, or somebody who donated to somebody's campaign. I want to make sure that the appropriations are being done by the book and by the need. And that's where my reform background would really come in handy. I'd also like to be on the local government committee, because having worked in local government, I know that local government is the level of government that affects people the most in their day-to-day lives. And I also know that local government, like any other government, can serve others than the residents. And so I really want to be on that committee too, to watch out for that and guide that in the right direction and make sure that our local governments have what they need to serve the residents every day.
Do you think there's enough cooperation between the different levels of government? As you know, a lot of local elected officials are complaining that they're not being included with decisions made by state elected officials, particularly with the coronavirus going on. Do you think there needs to be more communication between the levels?
Absolutely. In fact, in 2018, one of the things that I did and I'll continue to do this year, is reaching out to the local governments in my district. And I made it clear to them that once I'm elected, I want to have regular meetings with them. Me personally, not my people. I personally want to sit down with them quarterly in the beginning while we're making game plans. And then if we can go to every 6 months or yearly as our plans take effect. But I also want to sit down with the school boards as well in my district for the same reasons, because I think that they operate on two totally different planes, you know, the local government, the state, the school districts, and then the state. And how can I say, I think this town could be helped by doing this, when I haven't lived there, I haven't spent a lot of time there in my daily life. You know, it's arrogant to think that we know what's best for places that we've never visited or never lived in. So the best way to help all the towns and all the townships in my district and all the school districts is to sit down with them and say, okay, what do you need? What do you want? What are your plans? You know, in the grand scheme of things, if everything was perfect, what would it look like? And then we'll just work backwards from there. How can we get there? What's it going to take? You know, what's your first priority, second priority? What are the baby steps? What are the middle steps? That's really what I'm looking forward to doing. And I know that Sue Helm is not doing that. But it's absolutely necessary to make sure that everybody has what they need individually.
What about disability rights? I would argue that a group that is often sort of left out are people with physical disabilities, particularly with entering buildings. It's amazing to me the stores that have automatic doors.
Yeah.
And that don't. You know, a step, ramps often have a hill to them, even transportation if you can't drive. What are some ways as a state rep you can help expand access for people with physical disabilities?
Well, I know a little bit about this. I have a cousin who's deaf, and he has issues on a daily basis as well. And so it is important to me because being able to be self-sufficient and get around is really important to somebody's self-worth, to their ability to make a living, to their ability just to go where they want when they want. And so we've got to do a better job than that, than we are. I think all buildings obviously need to have access. And if they don't have the electric doors, then there has to be some sort of way for them to communicate that they're there and need to come in. But I would really love to see everything be self-sufficient, where they don't have to call for help, where they can do it themselves. I'll be honest, I don't know all the places that need improvement in that area, but I am definitely a champion of those that have disabilities of any kind, and I would absolutely fight for what they need, whatever that would be.
Okay. I have a question here from Tom. He wants to know if there's any current legislation on that or policy that you would enthusiastically support right now, or is there something that's been introduced that you would definitely fight against and vote down?
Well, House Bill 76 right now is a discussion on eliminating property tax.
Okay.
I am absolutely for eliminating property tax, but we need to find a way to do that doesn't inflict harm for harm. And this bill right now wants to replace the property taxes by increasing sales tax. And I do not stand behind that. I would not vote for that. It sounds good in theory, but when you boil it down, what you're going to find is that raising the sales tax to cover property taxes is damaging the same people that you're trying to help by eliminating property taxes. Because people who have low wage, who have low incomes, they generally spend every bit of their paycheck every week. They're living week to week, paycheck to paycheck. And if somebody who makes $15,000 a year needs to buy a refrigerator, for instance, the percentage of that sales tax, the percentage of that to their gross income, their annual income, is a lot higher of a percentage than somebody who makes six figures a year. And so we can't raise the sales tax to eliminate property tax, because that's just going to shift the burden again to the lower income people who are strapped for cash. So while I am for replacing the property tax, we've got to find a better option that doesn't put the burden on the people who can least afford it.
Is there anything or any issue we did not cover that you would like the audience to know about you?
That's a good question. We've covered a lot.
Yes.
But I would like you to know that I am an ethical, honest person to a fault. And I can't be bought. I cannot be intimidated. Like, lots of people have tried, and I'm not throwing this out there as a dare, but I really don't think it's possible to intimidate me. So don't take it as a dare, just take my word for it. But yeah, and I've been a fighter forever for the underdog. It's always been my passion to fight for people and to fight for things like animals who can't fight for themselves. And I am happily that voice. And like I said, I'm blind to party. I don't like labels. I like to look at people for who they are and not for the labels that we put on them or they put on them themselves, because a lot of times those labels can be very misleading, and you end up judging somebody when you really shouldn't. And I really, really want to be this next state representative, because I know that I will work tirelessly for the people who have voted for me, and not just the people in my district, right? Once I'm state representative of Pennsylvania, and I'm here to help everybody in the state. So while the people in my district are my top priority, I'm fighting for everybody. And once I'm state representative of everybody: Republican, Democrat, Independent, even people who haven't voted. And one thing that I realized when I ran in 2018, I went to a Poor People's Campaign meeting. And, after hearing everyone talk, I just realized how many people desperately need me to win this election, and they don't even know it. Because Sue Helm is not fighting for them, and they don't have a clue about that. They're so wrapped up in the troubles that they have in their everyday life that Sue Helm, and who is their representative, barely even registers to them. And I want people to know that they can count on me, that I'm going to do right by them, and that I'm not going to be bought by the people who donate to my campaign or the lobbyists who come through my door. I'm always going to be an independent voice who looks at every issue from both sides and figures out what the right path forward is. And I'm always going to be accessible to people, and I'm always going to want to know what's important to you. And, when you're running for office, it's impossible to reach everyone. As hard as you try, I can't knock on every door. I can't call every number. And I really would like people to share my message and let people know that their state rep isn't doing right by them, and that there is somebody running who will. And if they could just give me a chance, call my phone number. It's on the website. Reach out to me, email, Facebook.
And what is your website again? Could you please say that address again?
Sure. www.pattysmith4pa.com. And I'll give you a little secret. I'm the one that runs my Facebook page. Whatever's on there is from me. And anytime you ask a question and get an answer, it's from me. And so I'm proud of that. My husband's always saying, you don't have to respond to everybody, give me a minute. And it's like, no, I do have to respond to everybody. I take it seriously, and I don't even have the office, I take it seriously, and I want people to understand that and realize that I'm in it for you, not me.
I did get a last minute question here that I would like to just pose to you. Beth is on the Central Dauphin School Board. If I'm not mistaken, they just had to raise taxes at a week or two ago at the school board meeting. And she would like to know, I guess since you were talking about the property tax bill, do you have any ideas of what else they could do other than raise taxes or go after teacher salaries?
I know our school districts are in a really tough situation, but we can't continue to go after the salaries and the pensions of our teachers because we need them. And if we start making the job so unattractive that they have to have a second job or a third job, or it's one that they won't even consider at all because they can't make a living doing it, then we've got a major problem, because they are taking care of, they're teaching, they're molding the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And when we age out of the workforce, guess who's going to run our worlds? Those kids that they're teaching. And don't we want them to have the best education possible? People ask me why I care about education when I don't have kids. Well, that's the reason why. I want my next leaders to have the best of everything when they're growing up, so that they can be well-rounded and not perpetuate this negativity and propaganda and self-servingness, right? Wouldn't it be great if we just had generations of people who had empathy and who cared about everybody? I mean, it would just be fantastic. So, I think our teachers need to be paid more. They have to have a master's degree to teach. That's not cheap.
No,
That shows you
I
how
know from
committed.
experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So they are really committed, right? And they don't get the thanks that they deserve. They don't get the money they deserve, but yet every year they're showing up year after year and doing it anyway. So, I think we need to start. Woo, stink bug. You just dive bombed me, my God. Oh, look, I didn't kill it. I love my wildlife. Anyway, so, we need to pressure the state to make sure that all of our schools are fairly funded to start with.
Right.
That's a big one. And, we have money that we can put towards education, and there's other places that we can find money if the state really wanted to. We've got the Delaware loophole where people have businesses technically in Delaware, but they're making boatloads of money here and not paying any taxes. Like, there's all these different solutions that we could use, that we could put towards education. We could do a Marcellus shale tax. We could do, if they legalize marijuana, we could use part of that money towards it. There's so many options. It just has to be a priority. And it's not a priority right now. And it's not a priority because people aren't forcing the issue. So we've got to do that. I mean, sadly, if our elected officials, and I don't mean school board members, I'm not talking about them.
Right.
They are in a lose-lose situation, where they're trying to do the best with what they have. They have to answer to the parents. They have to give a good education, and yet they still have to keep the residents happy with the tax base. So I'm talking about leaders in the state level, who have to make education a priority. And I would definitely be that voice, because in my eyes, there's a lot of options we could have for funding our schools.
Well, thank you, Patty, for joining us. Everyone who did watch and listen to the broadcast, thank you again. I would encourage all of you to go to Patty's website and also come to the Dauphin County Democratic Committee's website to learn more about her and the rest of our endorsed candidates. Again, that's www.dauphindems.com. Also, yesterday was the last day to apply for a mail-in ballot So if you did not apply for a ballot yesterday, you must go to the polls to vote next Tuesday. You can also go to the Dauphin County Democrats website to see if your polling place has moved or been consolidated with another polling place. So I encourage you to do that. And again, thank you for joining us, Patty.
Yeah.
Patty does not have a primary opponent next Tuesday, but vote for her anyways. So you
Yes.
can get practice in voting for her on November 3rd.
And can I just say that I really appreciate all that the Dauphin Dems do, and appreciate that you put your faith in me to endorse me. I will not let you down. I will work as hard as I can to win this election. I have no plan B. I had to quit my job at the state to run. So my only option is to win this election, and I am going to do everything possible to do that. And I really appreciate your support and the help that you give us along the way.
And we are going to do everything we can to help you win that seat November
Thank
3rd.
you. Thank you.
So again, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, and if you missed part of this broadcast, it will be on the Dauphin County Democratic Committee's Facebook page for you to see in its entirety. So thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.